Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is time for a bumper pre-match special video today. Of course, Liverpool playing two games in the space of less than 24 hours on Tuesday and Wednesday. First up, we've got that League Cup game against Aston Villa on Tuesday night. And then we've got the massive Club World Cup semi-final all the way over in Qatar on Wednesday afternoon, evening, night, whenever you want to call it. But we'll start off with the Villa game. I'm not really going to talk about this one as much as I'm going to talk about the Club World Cup, because I feel like that's more of the priority, and that's certainly reflected in the squad that Jurgen Klopp has taken to that game. Of course, if you don't know already, Liverpool have taken pretty much all of their, all of their first teamers all the way out to Qatar, and it's pretty much going to be the academy lads playing in this game against Aston Villa in the League Cup, and that includes the management staff as well. Klopp is already over in Qatar, which means under-23s manager Neil Critchley will be managing the team for the game against Aston Villa. He took his press conference today, and in some ways it could be a blessing in disguise, because I think as much as Jurgen Klopp is hugely invested in youth development, given just how young the squad's going to be, there's going to be a complete absence of senior players. It is essentially going to be the side that goes out for the under-23s every week. It's perhaps better to have the manager that works with them every single week taking them on in this game. It does mean that maybe the edge is slightly lost for those players. I think this would have been an absolutely massive moment for all of them, playing a competitive game for Liverpool, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the fact this is clearly seen as a second-rate competition in comparison to the other ones that we're fighting for this season. If it had been, with Jurgen Klopp as the manager and all the backroom staff, if it had really felt like a first-team match, it may have been a slightly better experience for the young players. But in terms of actually whether or not Liverpool are going to win the game, it is maybe actually a little bit of a bonus that Critchley will be managing them, because he knows the players a little bit better. He knows how to get the best out of them as well, or at least you would hope he knows that. So in terms of injury news and team news going into this game, we have had a couple of blows. Ryan Brewster hasn't played for about 5 weeks now and is facing a very, very late fitness test to see whether he'll be able to play. It's a little bit of an ankle problem that he's been struggling with for the last month or so. Obviously, that is a blow for Liverpool in terms of, wanting to go through, because Brewster is probably one of the more promising academy youngsters. There's been a lot of chat about him potentially going out on loan for the second half of the season to get a little bit of playing time. So this would have been his last kind of opportunity to show us what he can do in a Liverpool shirt. So it's, it's a blow for him as well, because this would have been a fantastic moment for him, not only to play first team football for Liverpool, but to also be the kind of the talismanic player that we need in this kind of game. He would be the focal point. They would be relying on Ryan Brewster, and it would be a great test of his mental strength to see whether he can cope with that kind of pressure. Of course, the pressure's kind of off because it is the League Cup, and I don't think many of us are really expecting Liverpool to go through it, for being perfectly honest. If we had a few senior pros in there, a Shaqiri here, an Origi there, a Milner calming things down in midfield or something like that, then I think we would all feel a little bit less pressure, and we'd feel like there was more chance of Liverpool going through. But as it is, if they start struggling against what will probably be a senior Villa side, or at least will include senior Villa players, then they're not going to have those first teamers to help them through. And I think it showed against Arsenal. Even though the youngsters all performed absolutely fantastically, all of those goals that were scored by Liverpool players, of course there was a Mustafi own goal as well, all the goals that we put in the back of the net were from senior pros who kind of, dug out the result when it was necessary. So while the youngsters were fantastic, you need those senior players in the side to kind of carry them through the more difficult patches of the game. So it would have been great to see Brewster lead the line in more ways than one for Liverpool, and fingers crossed he will be available, but I certainly wouldn't bank on it. Yasser Larouci, the young left back, also has been missing for 3 weeks now for the academy, so he's a little bit touch and go as well. You can probably start to see why I'm not going to, put my neck on the line with a starting 11 prediction for this game, because if I'm perfectly honest, I don't think I'll recognise every single game in the starting 11 that Liverpool put out. I'm obviously hugely invested in our youngsters. I want to see them improve, and I've loved what I've seen so far. Players like Nico Williams, Curtis Jones, Ryan Brewster, Harvey Elliott, Yasser Larouci as well, Van den Berg, Kylian Hoover. But there are just going to be some players that start who I'm going to have never heard of before in my life. And in some ways that's good. In some ways that means I'm looking forward to the game as well, because we're going to get a real look at the potential future of Liverpool. And like I said, it's a great acid test for some of these players to see whether they've got what it takes. In terms of other absentees for the game, Curtis Jones and Nico Williams, both of whom were fantastic in the game in the last round against Arsenal, will not be available. They have already jetted out for the game in Qatar, so they will not be available. It was a bit interesting how the club arranged this, because originally when the Club World Cup squad was announced, it wasn't said that we were going to have players who played in the game against Villa and then travelled out to Qatar. It looked like they were all going to travel out as one, and I was really starting to worry that we weren't going to have anyone available for this game. You know, Harvey Elliott is also going to be part of the squad for the Qatar squad. Same with it's sounding like Kian Hoover and Sepp van den Berg as well. But the three of them are also going to be available for this game, and then there's essentially, you know, a nice little flight laid on for them to travel out immediately after the match if they so wish to join the squad for those games in Qatar. So Harvey Elliott will be playing. He will probably, you know, especially if Ryan Bruce is not playing, he will be the focal point for Liverpool. We'll be relying on him to create a little bit of magic. We've seen he's been fantastic so far. He's hugely important for the under-23s as well, despite only being, I think it's 17 years old now, which is absolutely mad. And he's a little bit of an unknown quantity as well. You presume he'll take Aston Villa a little bit by surprise. Of course, they'll try and do their homework, but they're certainly not going to expect from Harvey Elliott what he'll hopefully be delivering. But he will be available for Liverpool, as will Van den Berg and Kiana Hoover, who will, of course, be jetting out for the Qatar tournament straight after this game and may play some part. But I think it's more about the experience for those lads, you know, going away to a tournament in Qatar, the World Championships, giving them the chance to get those medals round their necks as well, which would be absolutely fantastic. But in the meantime, it will be Critchley managing the team for the game against Aston Villa. Jurgen Klopp has said that he and the first team will be watching this game as well. Of course, they're still invested in it. At the end of the day, it's them who's going to have to, you know, pick up the baton for the semi-finals probably, should we get there in January. I think that's another reason that I'm not too fussed about whatever the hell happens in this game, because quite simply, we don't really need that semi-final in January. Obviously, silverware is fantastic, and if we keep doing it like we're doing it at the moment, where the first team players are getting rest and the youngsters are getting plenty of game time, if we can carry that through to the semi-finals, it would be absolutely brilliant. But in the meantime, all focus is on this game for 24 hours at least. I'm not really expecting huge amounts. I'm not really fussed if Liverpool win or lose the game. I just really want to see our youngsters go out and perform, and if anything, it's almost certainly going to be one of the strangest Liverpool games that we will have watched in recent times. So moving on to the big one then, this is of course the match that everyone cares about. It's the World Club Cup semi-final on Wednesday afternoon, evening, night, whatever you want to call it. I believe the kickoff is at 5:30. It's live on BBC Two if you want to watch it in the UK. If you don't live in the UK, just check your TV guide. But anyway, Liverpool will be playing against Mexican side Monterrey for this match. And I think the real big obstacle for us to overcome in this match, at least, obviously, half an eye is already on that final on Saturday, where we presume it's going to be us against Flamengo. We have, of course, got to get the business done on Wednesday night. But a big obstacle is, I think, going to be jet lag and overcoming the adjustment to the climate and everything like that. The players have spent a lot of time on the plane. They haven't really had too much time to train, and of course most of that training will be adjusting to the temperature and the humidity, and stuff like that in Qatar, rather than too much tactical work. Jurgen Klopp said that while they were on the plane and after they landed, they did do some tactical work around Monterrey before the game against Watford. There wasn't really anything they can do, which feels a bit strange, because in a way this game is a little bit like a cup final. I know it's only the semi-final, but it's a single match. It's not two-legged, so it kind of all or nothing, and to only have 3 days prep for that feels a bit strange when you look back on Liverpool's previous final appearances. You know, thinking about the Champions League final last season, we had 3 weeks to prepare for that, and that was again an all or nothing match. This feels so much different, and Jurgen Klopp has said how he would have loved to have looked forward to this game, but there's simply so many matches on the domestic calendar and the European calendar as well that he hasn't really been able to think about it until now. And of course, we've got to take into account how Monterrey are going to treat the game. This is a final for them. The chance to actually beat a team of Liverpool's quality and make it through to the final is absolutely massive. And of course, they've been in Qatar for a while already. They've played that quarter-final game against Al Sadd a couple of days ago, so they will be a little bit more adjusted to the climate. They don't have to worry about jet lag and stuff like that. And you'd imagine coming from Mexico, there's not too much difference in terms of temperature and humidity compared to, you know, coming from the northwest of England. So there's certainly obstacles for Liverpool to overcome there, and I think we have got to treat it like a final because of that one-off nature, because of the fact it's all or nothing. And that means it's a huge test for Liverpool, because we haven't had many games like this in the past, you know, apart from the finals we've had under Jurgen Klopp, which have certainly been a mixed bag. You look back at the one we won, that was mainly down to Liverpool just bringing fantastic game management to the occasion in the Champions League final back in June. You look back at the ones we lost, and there are certainly mitigating factors. You know, the first two coming so early in Jurgen Klopp's reign, it's hard for him to make too much of an imprint. And of course, we all know the reasons behind why Liverpool did not lift the trophy in Kiev a couple seasons ago. But it's a big test for Liverpool, and hopefully one they can come through. So team news going into the game, there's been a little bit of chat about which players are and aren't training. The team took part in an open training session the other evening, and Virgil van Dijk was not present for it, although the club have been fairly insistent that it is not injury related. The current story, although they haven't actually released exactly why he missed out on training, is that it's because of a minor muscle complaint. This of course comes as no real surprise because of just how many games Virgil van Dijk is playing. I know every single video that I put out and I predict him in the starting 11, you guys go up in arms and you're like, when on earth is Virgil van Dijk going to get his rest? If I'm being perfectly honest, I've got absolutely no idea, lads. I think this Aston Villa game is technically his rest in a way. And of course, after the World Cup games even, there'll be like 5 days for the players to relax, and that's about as good as it's going to get for Virgil van Dijk, unfortunately. You know, with just how good he is and just how important he is to the side and the situation we've got with centre-backs at the moment, you know, of course, Dejan Lovren, once again, not going to be available for this game. Absolutely no timescale being put on his return from injury. Same with Joel Matip. Same with Fabinho as well, who left Anfield with a big brace on his boot and on crutches the other day, which was a slightly nerve-wracking sign. Hopefully those are going to come off sooner rather than later, but we just desperately need Virgil van Dijk at the moment. So in some ways, it's no surprise that he's been dropped out of training. We saw this with Andrew Robertson after the last international break, I think it was, where he didn't train, but he then started the match at the weekend. It's simply a matter of, you know, when a player's being put under that much pressure and their muscles are being put under enormous strain, sometimes it makes sense to just give them a rest, or maybe give them, you know, an inside personalised training program rather than letting them train on a standard program with the group, just to make sure that they don't suffer any injuries in actual matches. So while Virgil van Dijk was absent from training, there's no need to panic. He is hopefully going to be available to play in the game against Monterrey on Wednesday night. So as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up then, of course I think it's going to be Alisson Becker between the sticks. 3 clean sheets on the trot now. He's really hitting form at the perfect time, like an awful lot of the members of this Liverpool squad. Hopefully he can make it 4, maybe even 5 in a row. That would of course give Liverpool a fantastic chance of lifting the trophy on Saturday night. But in the meantime, he is almost certain to start between the sticks. Adrian has of course travelled with the squad. I think Kevin Kelleher might be joining them a little bit later on, but Lonergan has also travelled, so maybe Kelleher stays behind, plays the game against Villa, and then sticks around with the under-23s, and Lonergan's there as the third choice keeper. But I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that it will definitely be Alisson who starts the game against Monterrey. I think ahead of him it's almost going to have to be Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. I've got absolutely no idea what we do if Virgil van Dijk's not available. Of course, you could throw in Kiana Hoover or Sepp van den Berg, but they're almost definitely going to play in the game against Aston Villa, unless, of course, we know before the Villa lineup is set in stone that Virgil van Dijk's not going to be able to play for this game, in which case we may, you know, just emergency jet out one of those younger centre-backs to play in this game. But I think the more likely solution, if Van Dijk isn't available, is that someone like Gini Wijnaldum or Jordan Henderson drops into the role. We've seen Wijnaldum play in a back 3 in the past. Jordan Henderson was, of course, last season in the FA Cup game against Wolves, slated to play in the centre-back role before he was ruled out due to injury. I think he was meant to play alongside Fabinho for that game as a midfield centre-back pairing kind of thing. So I think that's more likely, but the most likely outcome is that Virgil van Dijk will be fit and ready to partner Joe Gomez. Either side of the pair of them, I think there's no arguments here. It's going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold and it's going to be Andrew Robertson. Ahead of them in the midfield, I think we go a little bit conservative with this. I don't think we go too wild. I think because of the way Monterrey are going to play, which I'll mention in a moment, and also the fact that it is a one-off game, we don't want to be too ridiculous. I think in other circumstances, maybe we think, well, they're weakened opposition, we want to go with the 4-2-3-1. I think that's the approach that we took in the game against Watford at the weekend. But I think given it's that one-off game, it's like a cup final, we have got to be a little bit more careful in how we set up. I think we go with a more sensible midfield 3, which means Henderson, who's been absolutely brilliant, goes into the number 6 role. I think Gini Wijnaldum partners him on one side, and I think we go with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain on the other side. I know Naby Keita has been fantastic, and I think he'll certainly play some role in this game, but we haven't seen much of Oxlade-Chamberlain lately, and I think he certainly deserves to show what he's got, because he is absolutely fantastic, as are pretty much all of the midfielders in the Liverpool squad at the moment. So I think that's how we line up in the middle, and then the front 3, I don't think we see any surprises here whatsoever, unless there are a few injury concerns, in which case maybe you see a Shaqiri, maybe you see a Divock Origi, but I think the most likely lineup for Liverpool is going to be full strength, Salah down the right, Mane down the left, and Roberto Firmino down the middle. So taking a look at Monterrey then, as I said, they did play a quarter-final game the other day against Al Sadd. They won that game 3-2. It was very end-to-end. There were plenty of chances at other sides. Monterrey showed that they do play free-flowing attacking football. They love to commit men forward at times. They do look absolutely fantastic. They can cut a team open. They've got a lad called Funes Mori up front, and before you worry that Divock Origi is going to get snapped in two, then don't worry, it's not that one. It's his brother, which means he's probably not going to be too different. Jurgen Klopp has already said that he expects passion from these guys. He said it's his first time playing against his any Central American team in a professional match as a football manager, but he's seen how they play and he kind of knows what the football culture is like there. They play with huge amounts of passion. They're probably going to play like they're going to die for the shirt, which I imagine will be a similar kind of setup to how Flamengo are going to approach that. Well, probably going to approach, should they get through and should we get through the World Cup final on Saturday. That sounds ridiculous just saying it. Liverpool playing in a World Cup final this week, but let's not get ahead of ourselves there. So yeah, Monterrey, they do commit a lot of men forward. They're incredibly passionate, and that does leave them a little bit open at the back. You know, we saw in the game against Al Sadd that at times Al Sadd were able to just cut them open and almost walk the ball through them at will. And some of that is down to the fact that they have got Xavi Hernandez, formerly of Barcelona, the pass master himself, as their manager. So it's no surprise that they played that way. But at times they were just walking the ball and moving it with such ease through the Monterrey defence. So I think there will certainly be opportunities for Liverpool there. And that's why I want us to line up the way I mentioned just now, because I do think it'll be more about hitting them on the counter-attack at times. While I don't think they're going to have huge amounts of the ball, I don't think they're going to be playing a possession game or anything like that. I think when they do attack, they look like they do commit men forward. And, you know, I wouldn't get too worried about the fact they scored 3 goals against Al Sadd, because if you go back and look at the game, some of the goals are absolute belters. I mean, if you've got a couple of minutes on your hands, then go and check it out. I think it's on FIFA's YouTube channel. Some of the goals, including the first goal, are absolutely sublime. Some of the most incredible strikes of the football that I have ever seen. And on another side note, I'm kind of glad that Al Sadd didn't get through, because they are a Qatari side, and that was evidenced by the way the crowd was responding. The stadium wasn't that full, which I feel like will be a slightly different story for this game. Hopefully we bring as many fans as we possibly can and can create a kind of home atmosphere for Liverpool within the stadium, but it would have been the other way around, I think, if we'd been playing Al Sadd, because of course plenty of their supporters are within a stone's throw of the stadium. So, you know, I think it's kind of a bonus in a way that we've got Monterrey, and while they did score those 3 goals, some of it was maybe down to luck. Maybe they're just absolutely fantastic at long shots, and that is something we've got to watch out for. But when they do attack, I reckon there'll be plenty of opportunities. And if Liverpool play that kind of counter-attacking football, and this is where I think we should treat it like a European game, like a European final, then I think we will score plenty of goals if we do our job properly. And listen, there's a chance that the front 3 doesn't fire, and then we end up in a little bit of a spot of bother. But I'm banking on them scoring goals, and I am, of course, banking on Liverpool getting through to the World Cup final. Again, sounds absolutely ridiculous saying it. I reckon it's probably going to be, let's go for 3-0. I'll go for 3-0. I reckon there's a chance of a 3-1, maybe even a bum-clenching 3-2 if we're not careful, because of the way that Monterrey attack. But I think if Liverpool are sensible, if they manage the game and take advantage of, you know, maybe the excessive passion that Monterrey are going to bring to the tie, like I said, this is the game of those players' lives. To get that kind of scalp against Liverpool Football Club in a World Cup match is absolutely massive, and they will probably play out of their skins. And this is where my worry does come from, of course, with us coming to the competition late, with us not having too much time to prepare. We could get overwhelmed by that, but if we manage the game sensibly, like we did in Madrid as well, that was Liverpool's big strength, and what we really had over Tottenham in that match was an ability to manage the game and control it at all times. If we can do that on Wednesday night, and we should be able to, because we are a better side on paper than Monterrey, then we should have absolutely no problem progressing through to the final of the World Cup. So before I go, before this video ends, a little bit of a word on the Champions League draw as well. This is an absolutely bumper video, so well done to you if you stuck around for this long. But of course, Liverpool did draw Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, which is in some ways a nightmare draw. It's always the team I've never wanted us to get, because it is going to be hard work. And of course, with our Premier League campaign probably taking precedent this season, the last thing we need is some massive European matches in February and March. In some ways, the schedule might end up working in our favour, because the first game is set around this weird winter break that the Premier League have organised, where half of the teams get one weekend off, and then the next weekend the other half of the teams get the weekend off. As it stands, if Liverpool get their game on the first weekend, then we'll have something like like we have a free weekend and around a 10-day gap before the game against Atletico, which could serve us very well. Of course, we know how much Jurgen Klopp loves a warm weather training camp, so I think if that happens, he'll probably be taking the players to Marbella or Corfu, Cyprus, Ibiza, wherever he likes to take the lads at this time of year. But that could end up being beneficial for us in some ways. Of course, we could take them to a nearby area to where Atletico Madrid are playing. Of course, the players will have plenty of fantastic memories of the Wanda Metropolitano after they lifted the European Cup just a couple months ago in that stadium. There's an Atletico Madrid tweet that's been doing the rounds today, which has come back to bite them on the bum, where they've said the stadium will always be the home for Liverpool, which, you know, doesn't really work now that they're going to be trying to use it for their home advantage in the game. I'm slightly nervous for it because, as I said, Atletico are a bit of a nightmare draw. We know how Simeone can set up. He will cause problems. It will be a difficult game. It will be a difficult couple games even. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be like the kind of game we would have maybe had against Lyon or RB Leipzig, where we could have banked on getting it wrapped up in the first leg and then wouldn't have had to commit too many players to that second leg at Anfield a month later. But I think it's worth mentioning that Atletico are in an interesting phase at the moment. While they've still got Simeone, so that means I'm still expecting passion, desire, you know, a low block that's going to be difficult to break down. They've had a big turnaround in terms of players at the moment. They're putting a lot of faith in João Félix. He's only 19 years old. He's kind of the future of Atletico Madrid rather than the present, although he is starting pretty much every single game for them. And when you look at current form as well, they've won 3 of their last 10 games. So they're maybe not the outfit they used to be. So it could almost be like it was last season with Bayern Munich, where it was seen as a difficult draw for Liverpool, but also the team were in a transitional phase where they weren't quite as dominant as usual. So this could actually function, you know, in a similar way to the Bayern game did for Liverpool, where I think that actually acted as more of a boost for us in a way. Being able to go to the Allianz and get that absolutely massive result gave Liverpool an extra bit of momentum, not only in Europe, but in the league as well. So listen, I'm obviously hopeful that we can get through. Of course, I'm going to bank on us getting through because we are the European champions, but it is a slightly unnecessary distraction. And if I could have chucked money into the ring and asked for a draw, then I would have asked for a Lyon or an RB Leipzig. But on the plus side, at least Manchester City have drawn Real Madrid. Sheikh Mansour's card has finally been declined when he's been trying to, I won't say rig these draws because that's a hell of an allegation, but they've been looked upon favourably by the supposedly random draw, I think it's fair to say. So that's hopefully a title race boost for Liverpool. But that is, of course, way off in the future. For now, it's all about the League Cup tomorrow night, the World Cup on Wednesday night, and hopefully more World Cup action in the final on Saturday. But until then, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Again, thank you so much for sticking around if you have done all the way to the end of this video. If you did enjoy all 20-25 minutes of it or whatever it is, then hit that like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon with the post-match content after we've maybe booked our places in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. Until then, bye for now.